Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I am joined by Paul Lamb to speak about Celtic Matchworn jerseys. Paul, welcome to A Celtic State of Mind.
Hi Paul, thanks for having us on.
It's a real pleasure, and we're going to do this as a regular series, Paul, because you are obviously an aficionado when it comes to Matchworn jerseys. You collect them. I've written a book about them, and that's how you and I got to know each other. You've helped me massively over the last 5 years with many of the jerseys that are in the book, and it's a subject that is very, very popular. There's a lot of collectors out there, Paul. Tell us about your own collection, how you started accumulating so many match-worn jerseys. What got you into it?
Well, to be honest, I think like most young guys when they were into football, you know, they all liked football shirts, you know, it's the identification of your own team, so I was always into them. I would say, going through the early 90s, my teenage years, when I really got interested in football kits, the designs of the other manufacturers, other teams, all this kind of stuff, was where my interest really peaked, you know. It would be 2010 was the first time I bought a player's shirt. Right. You know, before that, I never really knew there was a market for it, you know. I only experienced of it, the big name players shirts, you know, your Pelés and your Maradonas, that they would come up in the big auctions and go for tens of thousands of pounds, you know. And you'd never think you're ever going to own anything like that, you know. So it all kind of started from there. That first shirt was a Scott McDonald SPL shirt, right, from 2009, I think it was.
I always think back, Paul, to the days where every so often you would see somebody at a Celtic game. I'm thinking late 80s, early 90s, and they would have a Celtic jersey with long sleeves, and you just knew that it was what I would call back then a real jersey. And you knew, obviously, that everybody else was wearing replica jerseys just like you were. But if you ever saw a long sleeve jersey back then, you knew that had come from a player. So I never knew the whole match-worn thing existed myself until much, much later. But the long sleeves versions were never replica jerseys till much later. So if you ever saw one in the terraces, you always thought, wow, somebody's given them that, a player's given them that. And because Celtic were unique at the time with no numbers on the back of the hoops, you could never tell whose player's shirt it was. And I know that a lot of collectors find it difficult to this day if they've got a lot of the older shirts to actually identify who wore them. So the interest in the Celtic jersey, for myself, it took a long, long time to develop in my own mind. And I've never been a collector. I love them. And obviously I've handled virtually every one that's out there. It's available through numerous collectors like yourself, like Neely Mockin Jr. and various others, Paul. So I am now very interested in them, but I don't collect them. And that's why I come to people like yourself for your expertise. So this series for me, I think, is going to be very interesting. People talk about collecting football programmes and things like that. But there's another world out there of collectors, and it's the match-worn jerseys. I was lucky enough to attend the Stevie Chalmers auction fairly recently at McTears in Glasgow, Paul, and there were some amazing jerseys on display. The one that got more interest than any other was the Shamrock jersey, and it's one of the ones when I speak to people, it's almost the holy grail of Celtic jerseys. Is that the one that you would pinpoint as being one that you would suggest is the one to get?
It's definitely up there as one of the top ones, yeah. It's iconic now. And I know I was following the auction myself, you know, and it was a really low guide price that it started off on, but I think anybody who knew anything about football memorabilia knew it was going to go for way more than was stated, and I think it exceeded anyone's expectations when it went finally under the hammer.
It just continued to grow and grow. And obviously the white-collared version, which was even more unique, adding another wee bit of trivia to that. I wrote an article on axom.net explaining the history of the Shamrock jersey. It's one of the jerseys that was slightly controversial back in the day. It was nicknamed the political jersey or the political shirt for obvious reasons with the crest. A Celtic State of Mind were able to acquire some of the items from that auction, Paul, and one of them was the away jersey, which had become so difficult to get our hands on for the book. It was the all-green jersey that we wore during our Lisbon run in 1966-67 and beyond. And we were actually still wearing that jersey up until the 70s, sporadically. Now and again, it would obviously get dug out of a hamper if we needed it. And sometimes it was at home that we were wearing it. So you see players like Andy Lynch, for example, wearing the all-green kit much, much later in the 70s. So we got that jersey and the shorts. And we got it for a very low price. And I think the reason for that is McTears sold it as a training jersey. So what we're going to do is we're going to embark on a process of speaking to some Umbro specialists, experts, who will be able to confirm that it was indeed one of the 66-67 jerseys, and we'll take it from there. We'll then try and identify who wore it. It is the number 3, so there is a likelihood that maybe Tommy Gemmell wore it. However, if it was one of the older Umbro shirts, and these experts can tell by the labels, if it was one of the older Umbro shirts, then it might have been somebody like Andy Lynch. So we'll do a wee bit of research on that one, Paul, and we might have got the steal of the auction if indeed it was a Matchworn away jersey.
Yeah, it'd be it's one of the great parts of the collecting is the research that goes in behind identifying a shirt. Mm-hmm. So to pinpoint something like that would be superb.
There we are. But you, as I say, you're an expert. I've just done a lot of research in the last 5 years to bring my knowledge up to scratch, and you're always finding wee things that you just weren't aware of, jerseys that were worn once. And before we started this discussion, Paul, you and I were just talking about the current third kit, which is being sold off in the Celtic shops at the moment. It's never been worn, and obviously Celtic have announced that they've secured a new kit deal with Adidas. It's unlikely that another game will be played in this current season. Will that be unique in that it's the only Celtic jersey that will never be worn?
To my mind, I would say, yeah. There are a few examples over the years, as you said, that the shirt has maybe been worn once. The third kit from about 1986-87, the one that Simon Weir designed,
yes,
the white away shirt, was only worn, I think, in one kind of friendly game, I believe.
Yep.
It never even made a competitive game, so I think that was one of the least used over the piece, so it would certainly be up there.
That was one of the jerseys that, again, going back to a point you just made there about the research is actually quite fun because it throws up things that, have never really been documented anywhere, and they're not in the Celtic Wiki, that kind of thing, because obviously the Wiki is a brilliant resource for anyone who's interested in Celtic.
It's my go-to place, yeah.
Oh, it's brilliant. And obviously they've not captured everything that's out there, and Pat Woods, the great historian, has said that there's so much still to be found about Celtic's history, and coming from a guy like him who really is a walking encyclopedia on the club, you've got to take that as read. So that particular jersey, when I started doing the research on it, it just so happened that Simon Weir had appeared on the podcast. It was a complete fluke, and I didn't realise that he was into his memorabilia, and he's got quite a few jerseys as well. And we started chatting away, Paul, and through the discussion, it became evident that he, as a young 13-year-old kid, had actually designed that jersey and sent it into Celtic, who forwarded it onto Umbro. I know. Yeah. So all of that and more it's included in the book, and we even got some of the early sketches from Simon, believe it or not. Some of his kind of prototype sketches that he'd done in felt tip pen, and a response from Davy Hay back then saying, "Oh, thank you very much, I've forwarded it onto Umbro." We then got a letter from Umbro. So it's incredible to find out, but as you said, it was worn once, and one of the collectors actually sent me the newspaper article, the match report from the game, and it was a friendly. And the bizarre thing is that friendly doesn't actually appear on the wiki either, does it? On the list of games. So,
yeah, I don't think it does, eh?
Mm-hmm. So there are things out there that you can find in archives and through speaking to people, and we're going to have a wee chat today. What we've done, Paul, is you've selected 4 jerseys randomly from your collection, and we're going to run through the story behind each of the shirts. Now, the first one, we're going back to Celtic centenary year. Again, research shows that the club were actually founded in November 1887. You'll notice on the crest that it says 1888, and for many years, Celtic would have celebrated their birthday in relation to 1888. We now recognise that it's 1887, so 87-88 was the centenary season, but for the entire year, the calendar year of 1988, we did wear a quite phenomenal away jersey, Paul, which is going to be the first one we discuss. Tell us about your memories of that particular jersey itself, and talk to us about the jersey and what you like about it, because it's one of the greatest away jerseys, I think, of the club's history.
Oh, definitely, and it's taken a new resurgence as well. It's been a big cult favourite with the fans again now. Obviously, I'm like yourself, at a similar age where the centenary year was the first big year of my Celtic supporting life, my first vivid memories of going to games and the big players, so when you see that, any of the centenary strips, the centenary badge, it just takes you back, just brings all the memories back of some of the big games that year and just the amazing times around the club.
I think when I go back to the centenary season, it was special anyway because of the momentous occasion that we were celebrating. But at the same time, it was the season where I started going to the games. It was my first game was in 1987, Paul. It was a pre-season, and it was the Tommy Burns testimonial game against Liverpool. Mm-hmm. And of course, we wore the centenary home, which will appear in a future podcast with you, I am sure. The away jersey, there were a few different variations of the same design by Umbro, but what was unique about the one that you have and the one that will feature in my book?
Well, the away shirt for that year had been around since 1986. It was the same design, but for the calendar year of 1988, they added the centenary crest to it, and they changed the sponsor on the front. Mm-hmm. On the previous season, it was black felt that was on it, whereas the centenary year version is in green felt to match the numbers on the back of it.
These small changes for a Matchworn collector, though, Paul, they're very important because, when you look at, for example, the yellow away strip from Umbro that was introduced in 1986 and then it was kind of redesigned for the centenary year, there are versions where you've got the Umbro without any lettering under it, the Umbro crest, the double diamond without any lettering under it, and then you've got other jerseys where it's got the double diamond with Umbro written under it. Now that doesn't seem like a big detail, but what that tells you is that there's actually more jerseys out there to collect, because Matchworn collectors, for the completest Matchworn collectors, they will want one of each. They want one that says Umbro and one without Umbro, and it could have been just worn in one game, for any number of reasons. I think the research would show that, having spoken to Neely Mockin Jr., Paul, his dad, more or less, everyone knows his dad ran the kit. He was a kit man, and he was actually the kit man as soon as he came back as a trainer. It was a dual role, and that was a traditional thing at Celtic. If you were the trainer, you also dealt with the kit. So when Neely Mockin comes back and rejoins Celtic as the trainer, as it was called back then, he was a kit man. And through the years, obviously Celtic had an association with Umbro right back to the 1930s. So through the years, all the kind of kit, and I'm not talking about the deals in terms of the merchandising deals, but all the kit was ordered via Neely, so he went directly to Umbro. So in an occasion where the jersey remains the same, but a very, very small difference in relation to, let's say, the Umbro logo not having Umbro written underneath the double diamond, that would have simply been just a situation where during the season they've ran out of jerseys and they've had to order another lot from Umbro. And when they've arrived, it just so happens that the design has failed to include the Umbro writing underneath. But as a collector, all those small things, Paul, how does that kind of information come to light for yourself? Is it through talking to other collectors, or is it through studying images on the Celtic Wiki and all that kind of thing?
Well, it's definitely bits both of it. Kind of very lucky that a lot of the Celtic memorabilia collectors and other memorabilia collectors in general are very helpful and willing to share information, And as you said, studying media is a key part of it. Depending on how far back you go, it's trying to find images from a game or the sparse video footage that might be. It's nothing compared to the media coverage you get on games nowadays, where there's almost a camera on every individual player for the whole game. So if you want an image or a video, you can find it, no bother. So part of trying to find everything from those earlier seasons, the 70s and 80s, is all kind of part of the fun of doing it,
I think so, and again, no matter how well you think you know the club or you know a part of the club's history, there is always new information to learn. And one thing that I learned when I was writing this book, Paul, was we had a Celtic home jersey in between the Lisbon jersey and the 1970s jersey. You know, the 70s jersey that Kenny Dalglish, if you say Kenny Dalglish, it's the jersey he wore. Because, you know, in his early days, he wore the Lisbon jersey, the round collar one, but then in came the floppy collar with the V insert. But in between the Lisbon and the 70s jersey, as I call it, there was a jersey in between. It was worn once in one game. And even when you look at the Celtic timeline of jerseys, it's never included in it. And that's the official timeline. If you go up to the stadium, it's not there. And I only learned that this existed through Neely Mockin, because he had a couple of them in his collection. So what we're looking at is we're looking at a green and white hoop jersey. It's got a round neck, but it's also got the floppy collar. So there's no V insert. So it still looks like the 1960s jersey, but it's got a collar.
Yeah, it's got a collar attached to it. Yeah.
Yep. Now, when Neely first showed me that, my first question was, is that a training top? Because I'd never seen it in images.
Yeah.
You know, no, they wore that. So the research then showed us there's a couple of images of the game that we played against Clyde. Remember, well, you might not remember it, but the game in question is the one where all the players wore the number 8 shorts to commemorate the 8 in a row. And we played Clyde.
Yeah, I've seen images of that, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the game. So if you look closely, from a distance, it's actually difficult in a lot of the black and white pictures to see that it's a different collar.
Yeah.
But in that game, we wore a jersey that was worn only once, and I've not come across any other collectors, actually, Paul, who have got one of the jerseys other than young Neely.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be one that would be very rare to find.
I think he's got a couple. I think Neely's got a couple, but there you go.
Feel free to share, Neely.
Now, the centenary season was special in many ways. The club prepared themselves for it by, first and foremost, they upgraded the fascia of the stadium. And what we look at when you walk up the Celtic Way, the kind of red bricked front of the stadium, which quite recently has been upgraded again, that was introduced in preparation for the centenary season. So prior to that, Paul, you would have had the famous front door with the stained glass window above it, which is now thankfully housed within the stadium. But that was introduced, and there's a funny story actually that came from Tom Grant, and Tom said that he was a stadium manager, and he was in one day and Billy McNeil left his office and went outside and took the number 9 and 5 from the front of the stadium and unscrewed them and put them in his drawer, because he realised that the front of the building was going to get ripped apart by the construction workers. So he had the foresight to take the 9 and 5 from the Kerrydale Street 95. Who knows where they are now, but all these wee things are out there somewhere. And as well as that, there was a real celebratory feel regarding the season that was coming up. Celtic had finished below Rangers for the first time the previous year, for the first time since 1978. I mean, people forget just how unsuccessful Rangers really were. You know, right back to Jock Stein's time, there was a couple of trebles, successes. One of them was in 1978, one in 76. Rangers had been nowhere since then. We're moving into our centenary season, and there was a stage show at Glasgow's Pavilion as well, the Celtic Story. There was centenary matches played against the likes of Cruzeiro of Brazil, and there was an exhibition in Glasgow's People's Palace, as well as the Celtic crest appearing in flowers. There was a floral arrangement as well, and it's on that subject that I'm going to ask you about the Celtic crest. It was introduced for the centenary season, but only on the away jersey during games played in 1988. What was your thoughts on that crest, Paul?
For a young guy, that season I was 12, 13 years old, you know, and just to see something different, and you know, the image of that Celtic cross in the middle of the badge, you know, it looked superb. Just couldn't get enough of it, you know. Any of the merchandise that had that badge on it, you wanted, you know. It looked stunning. You
know what it does, and it's got a real retro but classy feel about it, Paul. Here's the thing for you. Celtic first trademarked a crest in 1967, right? So the first trademarked crest that Celtic Football Club owned, and still do to this day, was trademarked in 1967. I think it took them till September, October time after winning in Lisbon. Now that crest obviously is developed. It's the 4-leaf clover, but it's developed over the years, and you can see the changes. You can see them on the actual jerseys, but you can see them in print as well, Paul, how that crest has changed. Now, when we come up to the centenary season, interestingly enough, and I totally agree with you, if you saw that crest anywhere, you thought, that's a great item, I'm going to buy that. That crest was never trademarked. That centenary crest, to this day, has never been trademarked, so somebody out there might want to trademark it and utilise that. But there you go. I think that was...
Never knew that.
The Celtic board at that time never trademarked it. Celtic might want to do that and start running some merchandise lines with a centenary crest, because it sparks up some great memories of that particular season.
The centenary market for the retro replicas that are going about now the days is booming. You know, everybody wants one.
I mean, it's one of the things. I think obviously there's stipulations around trademarking, and you know, if you were to try and reproduce that, you would need to drop the 4-leaf cover, and you couldn't use the club's name. But as a crest, that was never trademarked, and that's just a wee interesting fact that you find when you're digging about for the information about jerseys, and that's what I did when I was putting this book together. So we're talking about an Umbro away jersey. It's got the V-neck. Now, the old style V-necks, again, terminology-wise, a V-neck probably started coming in early 80s for Celtic, didn't it? And it was just a simple white V-neck for the home jersey.
The kind of early 80s, I think 1980, was the first plain V-neck.
And it was classy as well, wasn't it? It was really,
it
was a classy neckline. Now, this one had a V-neck, but it was like a crossover V-neck. So one of the...
Yeah, overlapped at the point.
Yeah. And that's a classic style that was used by Umbro and Adidas back in the 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Now, the yellow had a diamond effect on it, didn't it? The body of the jersey.
A kind of shimmered, like a harlequin design. You know, it's alternative matte and satin, so it kind of shimmers, you know.
It does. And what you've got yourself there, you got your hands on a centenary away jersey. Again, I've not seen many of these, Paul, in my quest to try and get my hands on match-worn jerseys. Is this one of the rare shirts out there? Have you seen any other collectors that have managed to acquire one?
I've known of one other one, a number 6 version. That's the only other one I've seen of that. They've seen loads of the 86, 87 version with the normal Celtic badge on it, but of the centenary version, mine is one of only 2 that I know of. There will be others out there, they'll be in places, but they're just not known to the public, you know.
I mean, again, I'm thinking about that away strip, and the shorts as well were really vintage 80s, you know, with the green with the kind of diagonal line, wasn't it, with the yellow on the shorts. Yeah,
the yellow flash where the badge was on them.
Yeah, but again, the jersey was worn at times with yellow shorts.
Yeah, the last two games, I think it was away to Werder Bremen, and then a game at Love Street at the end of the year where they wore the yellow shorts with it, and it looked like a completely different kit because it was all the one colour.
It does.
Instead of the green shorts, you know.
It does. It certainly does, Paul. And these are the things then that match-worn collectors are thinking, well, where can I get my hands on the yellow shorts? Because, you know, with the numbers on them and all that, they look brilliant.
Oh, definitely.
And again, it's one of the things that Neely Mockin probably would have had to contact the guy that he knew at Umbro, and there's a colour clash coming up and we need to get some yellow shorts. It's quite incredible. And again, they probably were there after you wore in training until they were washed out and unusable. But so we've got a jersey there that was amended slightly for the centenary year. The C.R. Smith was changed from black to green. The Umbro crest, we've seen the Umbro logo, the double diamond with and without Umbro written underneath it. But the really unique thing about your jersey is the centenary crest. Now, have you been able to identify from the number on the back who wore that jersey and when?
Through a hell of a lot of research, kind of, yes. When I first bought the shirt, the information I was supplied with that it had been worn in the Werder Bremen game by Joe Miller. So obviously that's the starting point for the research from what you're told. But quickly found out that was wrong. From that, I managed to source a copy of the team sheet from that game. And the number 13 listed for that game as a substitute goalkeeper, Alan Ruff.
Right.
And Joe Miller was actually the number 15 substitute. Subsequent video footage of the game proved that as well, because Joe came on as a sub in the second half, and you see him running about the park in number 15. So you're then going back to square one on your research, starting to find out which games this shirt was worn in. Then you've got to find team lines to try and match up. One of the first things I did through a sparring works was I found a match programme from the end of the 88-89 season, where at the back it used to list all the results, but it would also list the players and the numbers for that game if they were playing. And whoever used to do that must have been very superstitious, because according to the stats, not one player wore number 13 that whole season. Everything went from 12 to 14 for every game.
Right, okay.
And then when you start to delve into the actual games, you find players who did wear number 13 in games that were listed in these programmes as wearing number 14 for some reason.
That's helpful, isn't it?
Yeah, so that kind of threw you down a sidetrack when it came to the research side of it. The definitive piece of evidence I found was in the season review video of the 88-89 season. I managed to get a hold of a copy of that, and there was the game before the Werder Bremen game. We were away to Hamilton. We won 8-0, and in the footage you see Owen Archdeacon on as a sub in the second half, wearing number 13. Again, in the programme notes of the one I was telling you about, he's listed as being number 14 in the squad that day.
Yeah.
For some reason, but there's video of him running about the park, again wearing the number 13 shirt,
Paul, I'm impressed with the level of research that you've gone to try and establish who actually wore the jersey. I remember the game, I really do, because we had McAvenny and McGee both scoring hat-tricks that day in 1988, 8-0. So you've got the jersey. Another point I would make, actually, is one of the Celtic jerseys that in the age of replica shirts, it was never made available to buy at the time. So you couldn't buy that particular version with the green C.R. Smith and the centenary crest, could you?
No, it was never available. And on the player version as well, the crest is fully embroidered into the shirt. Mm-hmm. It's not like a patch that's stitched on most replica shirts as well. So it just adds that wee bit more special touch to it, it just looks so much better.
Oh, it does. And back then, I remember certainly the home jersey for the centenary season, it was a very velvety crest that was on the hoops. And so when you see the match-worn editions, it's just the real thing, it's the real deal. And these are the kind of things...
the level of detail, because of the embroidery, it just looks so much sharper and clearer.
Oh no, every thread, you can see every single thread. But so it's a good start. It's great memories actually going back to the centenary season. The game you mentioned there, Werder Bremen, I think we drew nothing each away from home as well, didn't we? It just shows you, back then we could do okay from time to time in Europe, but we just couldn't get a run together, could we? But 0-0 against Werder Bremen away from home. So that takes us up to our second jersey, Paul, and this is one of the most controversial jerseys, if not the most controversial jersey in the history of Celtic Football Club. Talk to us about the away shirt from 91-92.
Oh, what can you say about it that hasn't been said already? The design was just something totally radical for the club. The colour scheme obviously is mostly based on various shades of green, but there's browns thrown in as well, which has never appeared on a Celtic shirt. And then the small mark of the sponsor on the front of it, which cheered a lot of people up.
It certainly did. I always remember there was a picture when it was released, and I bought it, by the way, at the time, Paul. I can't deny I did buy it, and that had a furry crest as well. But there was a picture on the back of one of the papers of Bobby Murdoch wearing it, and he was pointing at it with his face as if to say, what on earth is this abomination, But it was around about that time, Paul, that Adidas were releasing their classic designs, with the 3 stripes on the shoulders. They were releasing the Marseille jerseys, the France jerseys. Liverpool had that template. And then
it was a template that was widely used across a lot of clubs and international. So it was one of the first ones that really piqued my interest as a fan of football shirts, that Adidas template.
Oh, it was classy. It still is. I mean, I'd sometimes wonder why, particularly Adidas, now that Celtic are away Adidas, and we'll touch on that before we finish the podcast today, Paul, why they don't introduce some of these templates back in, because that is a killer design. The West Germany, the zigzag Germany top, which shows that zigzags can work. They didn't work on this away jersey.
Maybe not in brown, though.
No, not in brown. And then even just the simple thing like the 3 stripes right down the entirety of the sleeves, which just looks so classy. You think of John Barnes playing for Liverpool, with the long sleeves on. And, why don't the manufacturers go back to the simplicity of these things? But Umbro, I don't know what happened to them. They started producing these lurid templates. I mean, that particular jersey, again, going through the research process of trying to find, was anybody else having to suffer that template? And unfortunately they were. So Sliema Wanderers of Malta had that template, as did Oldham Athletic. And Parma had it as well, and obviously various different colour schemes. But at the time, Paul, what was your thoughts when we introduced that abomination?
Well, I'm in the minority where I really liked it. You know, again, like yourself, I bought it when it came out, and it was just so different. You know, it was a lot of our strips before, the away ones have just been plain colour. There's no radical design about them. This was just completely off the wall, and I thought that's fantastic.
I'm not wanting to give the game away, but I think I did call it the worst kit in the club's history in my book that's coming up. A wee bit of kind of self-opinion coming out there, but I did buy it, and I was doing a podcast one day a couple of years ago now with a chap called JP Mason. Now, JP is a lovely fella. He's the manager of the Twilight Sad. I know you like your music, Paul. And he also is the main booker at King Tut's Wawa Hut, which is one of the most iconic venues in Britain. You know, never mind Scotland or Glasgow.
Yep. In
Britain. And he turned up for the interview wearing this very jersey. And he just loved it. He just said, listen, this has turned into a cult iconic shirt, and it's hard to disagree with him. For all the things I've said about it, it's difficult to disagree with him now. If Celtic were to reintroduce that as a retro, do you think it would be a big seller?
I think it would be, because it's much sought after in the original replica form. Mm-hmm. At the moment, the market for them, if you can get a hold of one, there are phenomenal prices being asked and paid out there. So if it was a retro remake, I think it would be a seller.
What I would say about it as well, Paul, you're talking about trying to find some information from looking at old video footage. There is video footage of quite a few games actually where we wore this. And you know, from the back, it looks, with the long sleeves and the number, it does look okay. It's when you turn round and you see all that nonsense on the front, you start wondering what on earth's going on. But I think back to that era, and maybe unfairly, I think about Tony Cascarino wearing that jersey, right? And we all know how much of an expensive flop he was. But back in November 91, we're playing Airdrie at Broomfield, and it was raining, and he careered off the park and ended up colliding with a police sergeant who ended up suffering a career-ending injury, and we're wearing that jersey. So I just think that's what I think back to. It was just like a comedy of errors, that particular shirt. And going back to a point you made about the sponsor, I was intrigued to find out who actually okayed that, who signed that off at the club. So my research started with Tom Grant, and we asked Tom when he was on the podcast, and Tom blamed Jack McGinn, who at that time was the commercial manager as well as being the chairman. And I found that quite surprising, to be honest with you, because obviously Jack McGinn was a Celtic man. I mean, there was no doubt about that. And Tom had said that, you know, for years they had tried to get Umbro to produce the replica jerseys without the blue label. You know, the neck label was always blue and white.
Yep. Yep.
They tried unsuccessfully, and it annoyed Tom, and I think it annoyed Jack McGinn as well. But then when I went and spoke to Brian Gilder, who is the chap who owns People's Ford, I asked him whose decision was it to put the red, white and blue on a Celtic jersey, and he said it was Terry Cassidy's. So we can blame Terry for that one, Paul, right? We can blame Terry.
You can blame them for a lot of things back then.
Now, this also takes us on to your relationship with this particular jersey. I was very saddened to hear that after being generous enough to donate the jersey, loan it out for an exhibition down south, unbelievably, it was stolen from the building. Talk to us about that story, which thankfully ends on a happy note.
I just remember on the Monday morning checking my emails before going to work, and I had a message from my contact at the National Football Museum to say that there'd been an incident over the weekend and the shirt had actually been stolen from the premises. And I think I actually had to read it 2 or 3 times before it actually sunk in. What it was saying, you know, you think, how did that happen? You know, you think, because I'd been in the building, I'd seen it on display, and you think, how did somebody manage to physically take that? And then it was from there, just trying to get as much information as possible, and obviously trying to get word out as well that it was gone, to get people looking out for it.
The thing with that, Paul, when you had an appeal on Twitter, I obviously saw it and I messaged you, and it was just, I was gutted for you, because I thought, after a few weeks, I thought to myself, you're not going to see that jersey again. And then in the world of match-worn collectors, jerseys do come back up and people talk. I mean, you know, people from down south who collect jerseys and all over the place. And I have got an example of that, which I'm going to share with you. It's quite amusing. It is quite an amusing anecdote that I'll share with you when I was photographing all the jerseys. But after a wee while, Paul, you must have given up hope. And what was the breakthrough that you realised, wow, the jersey has been found, it's been returned?
I think when I first learned that it had gone, I pretty much at that point resigned myself to never seeing it again. Mm-hmm. I mean, from the little information that I'd been given, it felt as though the shirt had been specifically targeted, because there's over 200 shirts in this display. Some of them are the most iconic football shirts that have ever been worn in the history of football, yet this is the only one that was stolen. So I was convinced that it had been stolen to order,
yes,
and would disappear into a private collection and never see the light of day again. And in the early days of it, there was not a lot actually happened. There was little information coming from Greater Manchester Police, and after 2 weeks I'd heard nothing from them, so it led me to make an official complaint to Greater Manchester Police to try and kickstart things. And to be fair, it worked. I mean, within 2 hours of logging the complaint, I'd had contact from a police inspector reassuring me that things were happening, and a matter of hours after that as well, I was contacted by the officer who'd been tasked with investigating. And the biggest thing they wanted, the whole thing had been caught on CCTV, the theft, the whole thing had been caught, and to this point, the one thing they wanted was an image released to try and identify the person who'd taken it. That's what everyone involved wanted, but people had been dragging their heels. So 2 days after the complaint was made, Greater Manchester Police finally released an image from the CCTV of the person they wanted to speak to, and it went viral after it went on social media. It went viral. Contact from BBC News outlets up and down the country. I even had contact, and most people don't have, I had contact from Crime Watch, who were going to run a feature on it as well. But I think the blanket media coverage seemed to pay dividends. On the Friday, 2 days later, I received a phone call from the officer in charge of the investigation telling me that someone had been in contact with the National Football Museum and had said that they'd posted the shirt back to them. And at that time they said, please don't say anything to anyone about this, because obviously we've got no proof that this has happened. It might come to nothing. And then on the following Tuesday, I received a phone call from the National Football Museum themselves telling me that the shirt had arrived in the post, was in pristine condition, unharmed, and was stunned basically that this had happened. And it all came about from the image being released by the police to the media and the coverage it received. I mean, I can't thank everyone enough who shared it on social media everywhere. The coverage it got was wall to wall, and to my mind, that's definitely what swung it. Oh. That's what's forced whoever it was who had it to do what he did.
I mean, the image was pretty clear, Paul. You see some of these CCTV images and you just think, oh, you're never going to find that person. You're never going to identify them. This was a good image, and it's brilliant that you got the jersey back. I mean, normally when a Glasgow club appears on Crime Watch, it's not because someone's nicked their jersey, Paul, but on this occasion, that would have been an interesting development as well.
And there's a Manchester theme there as well.
So there is. The actual museum's someplace. I was down there last year. I was actually returning a jersey to them. They had loaned me the jersey that we wore away in America, and we'd actually swapped the sponsor to Coors, and it was I think it was classed as a European jersey, the white one with the green and yellow band right down the left. So the Coors jersey came in very, very late and will be included in the book, and it came from them. They just, believe it or not, they sent it through the post to me. And I wasn't too confident in sending it back. So we had planned a trip to Manchester for something completely unrelated, and I handed it in. It's an impressive place, Paul, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. It's an incredible setup. Obviously, the exhibition that my shirt had been loaned to, I'd been given an invite for the preview night before it opened, and made the journey down and went along with that with my friend who stays down there. And it's a fantastic setup they've got.
Oh, it's brilliant. For anybody listening, obviously you had a bad experience with someone stealing from the museum, but anyone down there, have a look. It's someplace. It really is. Yeah. Now, we've spoken about 2 Celtic away jerseys, the good and the ugly, I think I would say, but people might disagree. We're going to speak about, before we go on to the next jersey, which is a home jersey, I'm going to tell you a wee story about an away jersey that it really just builds on a point I made before. If someone steals a jersey, someone within the collecting world will find out about it, or find out about its availability, Paul, because it is a small world. And I remember way back in the day when the original Bumblebee jersey came out, and we wore it in pre-season games. We wore it in between sponsors, and we put on the Celtic FC on the black hoop. And in the Celtic View, there was a competition to win Jackie McNamara's number 4 jersey, and it had the Celtic FC on the front of it, right? And I remember that. I actually remember the competition. Anyway, many, many years later, I was looking through eBay, and I found this guy was selling loads and loads and loads of jerseys individually, Paul. And there were things like a £5 or a £10 or whatever. And here was the Bumblebee jersey with Celtic FC on it, and I knew how rare that was. So I says to the guy via a direct message, would you end the auction now if I give you 40 quid for it? And he did, and he sent it out. Now, before the jersey had even arrived in my house, I'd put it back on eBay using the same images, buy it now £150, and it was sold by the time it even arrived at my house, right? So there's a story, and I'm thinking, wow, that was a nice wee bit of profit there, because I'm not a collector. Years and years later,
it certainly is.
Years and years later, right, I'm in someone's house photographing their collection for the Celtic jersey book, and he pulls out one of the away jerseys. I'm thinking, wow, that's incredible. But the unique thing about the jersey is it was number 4, and the number had peeled off in certain areas. So I still had on an old laptop the images of the back of the jersey, and it was the same jersey.
It just happened to be the same one.
It was the same shirt. And it had since been sold from whoever I sold it to this gentleman, and maybe a couple of people in between. And although he wouldn't tell me how much he paid for it, it was a lot more than £150.
I can imagine. I mean, to get a hold of one of them for 40 quid initially would be one of the finds of the century. They're very rare to find. I mean, I'm still trying to get hold of one myself. Home or away version.
How foolish was it to sell it for £150, though, Paul, looking back?
You could have got more than that for it, I would say.
I think so. So that's my story about my dipping my toe into the Celtic Matchworn world. The other one, and I won't say any names or addresses, but the other story, which I find very intriguing, is I was speaking to someone recently, and their parents were friendly with Jimmy Johnstone. And again, I'm not giving too much information away because this is a developing kind of story, as it were. Uh-huh. And anyway, wee Jimmy gave them 2 jerseys, Paul. 2 extremely rare jerseys, right? And one of them was the Dukla Prague jersey. One of them was wee Jinky's Dukla Prague jersey, right? You know how iconic that. The home and away from that era were just superb jerseys. The colours were great, and they're very sought after, aren't they? I think Willie Wallace has kept his one, but they are very sought after. And the person who was gifted these jerseys knew, I really need to protect them. So they went up the loft and they hid them in the loft, right? And then they forgot about them and they moved house. So that's the story. So I'm like, right.
Oh.
I've never seen one of Jimmy's Dukla Prague jerseys coming up in an auction. So it's probably still sitting up that loft, Paul.
Yeah, it could be in someone's loft and they don't even know it's there.
I know, but I know what the address is to the house. So I'm not sure how we're going to tackle that one. But anyway, an interesting tale. And we've been speaking very much about away jerseys, Paul. What would you say generally would be your preferred choice of colour for an away jersey for Celtic?
I've always been fond of the white away shirts. Mm-hmm. I think the ones that we've had over the years have generally been pretty classy ones. One of the first ones that springs to mind is the 2001-2002 version with the green stripe from the collar down the sleeves.
Yeah.
It's simple, elegant design. It just looked classy. And again, it was one that was generally the white away shirts are sparsely used. You tend to find some of them have only been worn in 2 or 3 games throughout their time. That tends to add to the story of them as well.
Yeah, aye. And they're much harder to get. The one you mentioned, I think, is quite hard to get, isn't it? The the jersey which I always relate back to Moravcik's free kick at Easter Road.
Yep, that's one of the abiding memories of that shirt, is that game at Easter Road.
Yeah, and it's quite hard to get, and it looked better in long sleeves as well. I don't know why that is, it just looked better with the long sleeves.
Well, funnily enough, it was one of the ones I'd been missing from my collection, trying to get a hold of a version of that, a player version of that shirt. And earlier on this year, I managed to get a long sleeve version of it. Very surprised at how I picked it up as well. It was in a lot of listeners might know the pop-up football shop that was in Glasgow earlier on this year.
Right.
It was just hanging on the rail. Whether people noticed it or not, I don't know. But I just happened to be in one day, and straight with the long sleeves caught my eye. It was quite rare to find that in long sleeve as a replica version as it is. And when I realised it was a player's version, there was no second thought about it. It was just, that's getting bought.
Absolutely. Whose jersey was it then, Paul?
Tommy Johnson's. Clearly, it was one that must have been made up for him for pre-season or something like that, because he'd actually left the club before the shirt had been worn. He left in the summer of 2001, and it was that season, the following season, the 2001-2002 season, that it was worn in. So it's not a worn shirt. It's been a prepared shirt for a game, but he obviously wasn't there to wear it.
Now, these are the things, the terminology you're wearing there, you're using there as well, match worn, match prepared. And what an absolute find that was. Hopefully you got that one for a good price as well, Paul. And we'll now talk about the home jerseys. It must be quite difficult, I guess, for the manufacturers to continually produce home jerseys for Celtic with a difference, because, I mean, it's fairly unique. There's not many clubs got green and white hoops, and people think, you can't do much with them. But I'll tell you what, the jersey we're going to talk about next, that was first worn in the Scottish Cup final in 1995, definitely did make quite a few changes. Talk to us again about the design of that jersey that was introduced for the Scottish Cup final, Paul. Again,
it was something very different, where the variation and the width of the hoops on the shirt was very, very noticeable. Normally it was, before that, the Celtic home shirts was just a set number, set width of hoops across the shirt, whereas this one had some broader than others, which was a first, as far as I'm aware, for the club.
Yeah.
Which made it stand out so much more. Like most of when it comes to the radical designs, loads of people aren't too keen on it at first. Like most of them, after a period, they grow on you. And again, it's another one that's gathered cult status over the years. It's much sought after in replica form, and it's another one that's making the retro market come alive again as well.
There was a few things I remember about that jersey. The collar was quite a firm material, so you could give it the old Eric Cantona. You could put the collar up, and it had the green and white hoops all the way through it, and it looked really, really good with the V-neck underneath. And also, the replica versions that you bought, the crest was on a shield, so you had a nice embroidered crest, but then the Umbro and the C.R. Smith were, integral part of the actual design, so they weren't stuck on, they weren't velvety, they were just there, they were part of the hoops, you know. And then within the hoops you had the design, which was the Celtic text with the Celtic crest. So fond memories of that, because I've got fond memories of Tommy Burns' time at the club, and that was the jersey we wore when we won the first trophy under Tommy, the only trophy as it turned out under Tommy Burns. But it was also a jersey, Paul, that was worn in various one-off games, benefit matches, etc. And the one we're talking about today, and we will put up some pictures on the social media and also on axom.net so people can look a bit closer from your website. And whilst I mention your website, Paul, tell us where to find all these jerseys. Where do you host all your jerseys?
My own collection is hosted on my website. It's www.mycelticshirts.co.uk.
And all of these can be found on there, and obviously what we'll do is we'll put links on the bottom of the podcast description so people can have a look at them in detail. I remember the game that was played against Bayern Munich, Paul, and it was for Peter Grant's testimonial. We wore that jersey, but there was a unique twist to it. So talk to us about what makes this jersey a wee bit different.
Yeah, it was another game where it's been a testimonial. It featured embroidered detail for the game, but there was an added twist to this one where it had a 4-leaf clover embroidered onto the shirt as well above the match detail, where 3 leaves of the clover were black and 1 was red, which made it stand out. You know, it was totally unique to any one-off game. It's normal it's normal for the match detail to be embroidered, but for an emblem or a logo to be featured on it as well is very unique.
Absolutely, and I think, thinking back, I was at the game actually against Bayern Munich. It was January 97, and I remember a wee Celtic fan ran onto the pitch, didn't he, to try and get Matthias's or Klinsmann's autograph, I think. Was that you? I remember it. And
No.
That wee crest that you're talking about, where one of the sections was red, it almost made it look like a heart, like the heartbeat of Celtic, I think. It was maybe the designer's idea there.
Part of my research into when I got the shirt, I found out the story behind it was an emblem designed by Peter Grant's testimonial committee.
Right.
And the red leaf, as you said, symbolising the heart, was denoting the fact that they thought Peter Grant was the beating heart of the side, and that was the emblem that they came up with for it and featured in all the match programmes, and then it actually made it onto the shirts as well.
Mm-hmm. I think I remember seeing it on a ticket and in the programme, but you're right, and to be fair, Peter Grant divided opinion, but talking about the beating heart, the first time that jersey was worn against Airdrie, he was the beating heart of that particular team that day. He was the man of the match by some distance.
Undoubtedly.
I mean, he played through injury and all sorts. A couple of wee things I remember about that shirt myself, and it's something that it might crop up again because it was worn in various different one-off games, benefit matches. But also, that was the jersey, the home jersey, that also had the Celtic FC on the hoop, Paul, in between sponsors. And we wore it when we played our pre-season games in the Netherlands, and that was for the 97-98 season, when Wim Jansen was incoming, and we're beating teams like FC Beatrix 21-0. I don't know if you can remember that, playing these amateurs and beating them 21-0. And so there's a few good pictures on the wiki actually of players wearing that variation of that jersey with the Celtic FC on it. There's then another version of that which was worn in one of these old boys games, the Crocs games. There's a good picture, and it's Andy. The reason that I'm aware of it is Andy Lynch is in it, and Brian McLaughlin, the first Brian McLaughlin, Super McLaughlin, he's in it, and I think maybe Frank McGarvey's in it, and there's obviously a team of old boys playing, and they're wearing the Celtic FC jerseys, but to the players, it's a patch that's on the sponsor. It's not part of the design. It's actually a green patch with the Celtic FC on it, Paul. Yeah,
I know the one you're talking about. Yeah. I've seen one or two of them.
So again, it's another rare jersey, isn't it?
Very rare, very collector's point of view. It's very sought after as well.
So yeah, that's a different take on the hoops, and it takes me back. I remember your Cadete, Van Hooijdonk, the Three Amigos and Andy Tom. I remember all these guys wearing that jersey. And we wore it on the return to paradise as well when we played Newcastle that day in the sunshine. So good memories about that jersey, Paul.
There's a lot of memories attached to that particular design. As you said, many great players for back then, Phil O'Donnell's and things like that. There's so many memories attached to it.
Absolutely. And again, Paul, what I would say in relation to the hoops, it must be difficult. It really must be difficult to come up with designs every year, new designs every year, because it's every single year now that the home jersey changes, and it's maybe a good opportunity to talk about the new deal that's just recently been done with Adidas. How much are you looking forward to seeing the creations that Adidas can come up with?
Oh, very much looking forward to it. I think anybody that's been a football fan over the years knows that Adidas have made some of the most iconic football shirts for clubs and countries. You ask someone for the top 10 football shirt designs over the years, and half of them will probably be Adidas shirts.
Yeah.
So for a name like that to be designing the new Celtic shirts, it's the one manufacturer I think most fans have wanted for years, and it's finally happened. So really exciting to see what they're going to come up with.
It definitely is. I do remember an old Queen's Park. There's quite a few really, really good-looking Queen's Park Rangers jerseys from the 80s, actually, that Adidas did. Because you wonder about the hoops with the stripes down the sleeves and that, and it can work, and they've done it with QPR back in the day. So here's hoping they can do it justice. It's not the easiest design.
That is not, but I'm sure they'll come up with something pretty spectacular.
I hope so. I really do. Now, we've spoken about the era of Tommy Burns, And Celtic paid tribute to Tommy in May 2009, who sadly passed away after his brave fight against skin cancer, Paul. And on that particular day, one of the Celtic teams wore another jersey that wasn't seen that often. It was one of the white jerseys, which you've already mentioned that you were a big fan of. You liked the white away kits. Talk to us about it was called a European jersey. The one that had the tartan trims and the tartan shorts.
Again, when it first came out, it was a simple classic design, just a plain white shirt with the V-neck, and it had what seemed to be becoming a trademark green flash down from the shoulders. But when you look at it closer, you see it's a tartan design that's embedded in it, and it's just, again, it's simple, classic style. And again, it was another one that was very rarely used as well. It was very underused, and to me it's one of the classic away strips that we've had.
It is, it's very classy. I think that's the best word to use when describing it. It's very classy indeed. And when I think about Celtic and tartan, there was always that, the Celtic tartan collection, and you could buy the bonnet and you could buy the scarf and all that kind of thing. But do you then bring that into the Celtic jerseys? Historically, tartan hasn't always worked in football design. When you think about, there's a horrific old Dundee strip back in the 50s, and then I think Matchwinner did a Greenock Morton home and away tartan jersey in the 1990s. But the one that I did like, Paul, was Scotland's jersey that they wore at the 1996 European Championships. I thought the use of tartan in that jersey was very, very well used.
Again, I think it just depends on how you use it. It's a very subtle colour design on it, so it's not in your face, which made it work really well. That one, and the one you're talking about exactly. And it was one that did work.
Oh, it certainly did, and I remember looking at it thinking, would it have worked for a Celtic away jersey? As long as the tartan was like a dark green, and we obviously saw that much later on when it was around about the time of the referendum, I think it was, and Celtic had this tartan third kit, and I remember it was actually worn on the night that I got married, so I should remember that date. I should really remember that. It was it was the 18th of September, and it was 2014, Paul, just to make sure that I can remember. And we wore it in Europa League that night, and Wakaso scored. That's what I remember about that jersey. Wakaso scored wearing that. I think Scott Brown might have scored that night as well. But I think
you're right there.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure talking about the Celtic jerseys. There's one other thing I was going to ask you before we wrap this one up. But again, this is going to be a weekly series of Matchworn Jersey podcast with Paul Lamb. I was going to ask you, there's been a lot of talk about a Celtic museum. And there's people like yourself and others who have got very impressive collections that I've been lucky enough to see through my research for my book. You've maybe got 4 or 5 collectors that I'm aware of that have maybe got over or well over 100 jerseys, Paul. Now, if you put them all together, that is a quite incredible collection. If Celtic's museum was ever to see the light of day with some of your jerseys, would you be happy to donate or loan some of your jerseys to that museum?
Well, definitely. I think it would be an honour and a real highlight of being a collector to say that you've had, or your shirts are on display at the club. I mean, I was fortunate enough a couple of years ago for Scott Brown's testimonial, where some of my testimonial jerseys were on display in the stadium, in the area just behind the boardroom, and it was a real privilege to have them there for everyone to see. I think at the time they were on loan for about 6 weeks, so everyone who was either at the stadium for a match day or stadium tours would have seen them, and been able to share them in that way as well for other fans to see was really good, and I'd be more than happy to do it again.
That's something to look forward to, Paul. Hopefully once normality resumes, we can start looking again at the plans, and it would be great for Celtic fans, young and old, to look through some of these astonishing collections, and collectors again, it would really be a dream for guys like yourself to look through the Neely Mocking collection, for example, which is something else completely. So, Paul, I've got to say, thank you very much for taking part in our debut Matchworn Shirt podcast. We'll keep it going. I've found everything you've said about these jerseys dead interesting, and I know there's a lot of others out there who'll be very interested to hear what you said. So thank you very much for coming and joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.
Well, thanks for having us on, Paul. Appreciate it.
An absolute pleasure, Paul. Take care.